And we're recording. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to sightofmoon.com and welcome to our shut-in, locked-in Shabbat service here around the world. And we have people here from around the world today, so this is awesome. I thank you all for joining us. And I guess the only way I could get you all come is by having you all locked in your rooms. So this is awesome. Thank you. I've been having computer problems or bandwidth problems. And so the screen may freeze at some point, as it did already, and I'm not sure why that was or if it's me or not. So just be aware, I will be coming back as soon as it unfreezes. So just be aware of that. Today, we are going to talk about the Prophecies of Abraham. Now, many of you already know that. You've read that book and you understand how we arrived at it. And for some of you, this is going to be a review. Awesome. For some of you, it's going to be brand new. So that's why we're going to sort of go through it. But when we get to the end is what I'm excited about. And that's the part that I've only just realized in the last week. I shared this with Pauline, last Sunday or Monday, or maybe last Saturday, I forget. And she got all excited and began to cry. And so I put it together in a PowerPoint, and then I brought it to Jan here. We were supposed to meet yesterday morning, and we kept bumping each other because it's such a beautiful day here and there. We finally got together last night, and we went through it. And I love Jan, but when the light bulb goes off, you can see her face light right up. So it was great to see that. So she's understanding this as being something important, and that's why I wanted to share it. And it just so happened that it was my turn to speak this week as well, so it was perfect timing. So with that, I believe, if my estimate is right, it's going to take a couple hours. And I'm always wrong in my estimates. It'll probably take 4. So just giving you a fair warning. Now, if I'm not sure how this is going to work. So I'm going to I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to see if I can still keep track of people coming into the room.
Joe, you want to bless this meeting first?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I'm just trying to work all these controls here at once. I got to figure out a way to have someone else do this and still have control. For 2 people to control it at the same time, that would be awesome. There we go. Yeah. Okay, so I do not see how I can let people in doing this.
Joseph, you could try logging in with your phone too, and then use your phone to control the admin and use your computer to do the screen share.
Brilliant, brilliant. Who's just said that? Okay, and I gotta, whoever's talking, I don't have the control panel in front of me. So give me a second, I'm sorry. Stop share. Sure enough, my phone's not working right. Okay, I'll pop in and out every couple minutes. That's what we'll do. Our Father, Jehovah, our powerful and great Creator, thank you for this day. Thank you for us being able to have this technology where we can talk with each other and meet each other from around the world at the same time. Thank you, Father, for the blessings you've given us. Bless me, Father, today and be able to convey the message that you've shown me this week. Help me to convey it so people can understand it and not get lost in the explanation. And help the brethren here, Father, to understand it and to listen intently, to take notes and help them to understand it. And just bless us all, Father, with this understanding that you've shown us. So I thank you for it. I thank you for the ability to do this and ask your blessing upon this name for the glory of your great name. In the name of Jehovah, I pray. Amen. Okay. Well, I'm going to pop in and out every couple of minutes, see if there's anyone else wanting to get in, because I can't do this that way. Unless, let's see. Somebody want to email me on Facebook and send me the link to this right now on my phone, and I'll see if I can do it that way. If you can send me the link to my Facebook page. No, that won't help because I won't have control there.
Zach is saying if you go to the share screen, there's an option on there to allow another user to take control. Can you see that?
To the share screen. What am I looking at there, Randy?
Teacher Zach said it. Can you speak up, Zach?
Yeah, so if you go to share screen and then it says view options, you might be able to see it there.
One participant can share at a time. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I clicked on that. How do I give this to somebody then?
You can choose the person who you like. So if you want to choose Randy or anyone.
I don't see how I can choose somebody. Oh, there is make host.
Maybe other select from the participant.
Yeah, make
list.
host.
Make host.
Yeah.
Okay, Randy, you got control. Let me see. Somebody comes in there. Can you see the side there, Randy, where everyone's coming in? I'm going to leave that with you. And I'm going to take the screen and start teaching. We good? Thank you, Zach. Appreciate that.
Praise Yah.
Okay. Okay. Kurt, do you see what I got on my screen there? Just nod your head. Okay, very good. So by the time I post this to you guys, there's about a 5-second delay. So this is what we're going to be talking about. And I'm just going to go through it for the new people. And let's just get into it. We first began teaching the subject back in 2005. This presentation was prepared in 2008 for our speaking tour in March that year with the Prophecy Club. And we are now updating this in March 2020 as the coronavirus shuts down the world. 1 Peter 3:12, for the eyes of Jehovah are on the righteous and his ears are open to their prayers, but the face of Jehovah is against those who do evil. And I do not know why I've got that there. So I'm asking you to pray. Pray for this meeting, pray for what's going on in the world, pray for the understanding that we need. So when your prayers are to be offered, and I'm teaching this to, at that time I was teaching this to new people, Christians mostly. What is righteousness? What is righteousness? 1 John 2:3. Now by this we know that we know him if we keep his commandments. He who says, I know him, and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. 1 John 3:22. And whatever we ask, we receive from him because we keep his commandments and do those things that are pleasing in his sight. 1 John 3:24. Now, he who keeps his commandments abides in him, and he in him. And by this we know that he abides in us, by the Spirit whom he has given us. So it's that Spirit that you guys all have that's helping you to understand what we're doing and what we're talking about. And not just that, but to understand his Torah, especially in these last days. But 1 John 5:2, by this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and keep his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. Again, this is review for many of you, but for some, this is new. In order to be righteous, you have to keep his commandments. And so here's, Ezekiel 14:12-23. Even though Noah, Daniel, and Job were in the land, they would only save themselves by their righteousness. Verse 13, if you want to open this up in your Bible, Son of man, when the land sins against me by persistent unfaithfulness, I will stretch out my hand against it. I will cut off its supply of bread, send famine on it, and cut off man and beast from it. Even if these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they would deliver only themselves by their righteousness, says Jehovah. I will, if I cause wild beasts to pass through the land, and they empty it. Now, again, these wild beasts, they're not lions and tigers and bears. These are pestilence, bacteria, viruses. Those are animals. And they will empty it and make it desolate, that no man pass through because of the beast, because of the pestilence. Even though these three men were in it, as I live, says Jehovah, they would deliver neither sons nor daughters, only they would be delivered, and the land would be desolate. Or if I bring a sword on the land and say, sword, go through the land, and I cut off man and beast from it. Verse 18, even though these three men were in it, as I live, says Jehovah, they would deliver neither sons nor daughters, but only themselves would be delivered. Or if I send the pestilence into the land and pour out my fury on it in blood, and cut off from it man and beast, even though Noah, Daniel, and Job were in it, as I live, says Jehovah, they would deliver neither sons nor daughters. They would deliver only themselves by their righteousness, by keeping the commandments. For thus says Jehovah, how much more it shall be when I send my 4 severe judgments on Jerusalem, the sword, the famine, and wild beasts, and pestilence, to cut off man and beast from it. Yet behold, there shall be left in it a remnant who will be brought out of it, both sons and daughters. Surely they will come out to you, and you will see their ways and their doings. This is an important verse to consider, reading here, to keep in mind in the times we're in right now. Because in the 4th verse, or the 4th plague that I've been talking about for years, about it being the sword, I have neglected the pestilence and the famine part. Yes, I mention it, but I've neglected to bring as much emphasis to them as I have to the sword. So we're now in that cycle when these 3 things are happening at the same time. Now, again, we talk about Leviticus 26 all the time, but it's the famine, the sword, and the pestilence in the 4th sabbatical cycle. So that's why we're reviewing this, and this is why I went back to this. This is, again, one of my first teachings I've done, and I haven't had to change it very much. I've just updated it to bring it up to today's date. So the prophets of Abraham declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times, things that are not yet done. What does Jehovah mean when he says he's declared the end from the beginning? Where has he done this and how? So if you go back to look for this stuff, where is it? And you go back to Genesis, where is the stuff that he said back there? And a lot of it is in under the cover, under the radar. It's not spelt out in black and white. That which has been will be, and that which is done is what will be done, and there's nothing new under the sun. And this verse keeps coming up all the time. Another verse to keep in mind, Yeshua is the same yesterday and today and forever. That was Hebrews 13:8 and Malachi 3:6. For I am Jehovah, I do not change. Therefore you are not consumed, O sons of Jacob. So the methods that Jehovah uses to teach are consistent. His methods he uses for punishment are consistent from the very beginning up until now. And that's why I'm able to go back and forth, because I'm relying on these scriptures here to prove he's the same. What is sin? Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. Again, much of this is review for many of you. Ezekiel 8:4. The soul that sins will die. It doesn't go on to live in purgatory. It doesn't go on to live in hell. And it doesn't go up to heaven to live there forever. Paul says the same thing in Romans 6:23. The soul, the wages of sin is death. The law is the 10 commandments. The fourth commandment is the one no one wants to keep. Excuse me, 1 second here. I gotta eliminate this. The fourth commandment is the one no one wants to keep. And that includes the holy days of Leviticus 23 and the sabbatical years of Leviticus 25. And those are the Sabbatical and Jubilee years. Now, the conclusion of the law is in Leviticus 27, verse 34. These are the commandments which Jehovah commanded Moses for the children of Israel on Mount Sinai. This ends the book of Leviticus. Now, there's a little thing that I had caught before. Change it right now. You can see how old my notes are. So in James 5:16, the effective fervent prayer of the righteous man avails much. If you're keeping the Sabbath, if you're keeping the holy days, if you're keeping the sabbatical years, you are considered a righteous man. But you got to be keeping the other laws as well. And you've got to keep them. It's part of who you have to become. By keeping the law, this is the way that your prayers are heard. Again, 1 John 2:3. Now by this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He who says, I know him, and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. And your prayers will not be heard. Now, I mentioned before we started here that there's a gentleman on here today that we've been praying for. And there seems to be some miracles happening there. And who is it? Which one of us is the righteous person praying for him? I don't know, but it's awesome that this is happening. So by keeping the commandments is important for your prayer life. Oops. So we're told in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28 the penalties for our sins. The penalties for our sins. So we know what sin is, but here, these are the curses you're going to get for not keeping them. You can go and read that on your own. I'm not going to take the time here, and I'm rushing a little bit because I know how long this is going to take, and I don't want you to fall asleep on me. And because some of you are up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, I want you to hear this. And you're lying in your bed, and I know how tempting it is to go to sleep. So, again, this is review. We're going to figure out the chronology of man. Some claim this year to be 2020, 6020, 6020, which means that we are already into the 7th millennium. The Jews are saying this year is 5780 as of Yom Teruah back in 2019. So what is the proper year? Again, for many of you, this will be review. So when we do the chronology in Genesis, Abraham was born in 1948, 1,948 years after the creation of Adam. Now, I've already worked this all out, so I'm skipping a lot of the details here, but Abram was 80 years old when he made the covenant with Jehovah, or Jehovah made the covenant with him. There are 430 years from that covenant, according to 1 Kings 6:3. 430 years, I'm sorry, that's not 1 Kings 6:3, but there's 430 years from the covenant to the Exodus. So that's part of the promise made to Abraham by Jehovah. And then 1 Kings 6:3 is 480 years from the Exodus until the 4th year of Solomon. And then from 967 B year, when Solomon built the temple in the 4th year, to today is 2,987 years. So what we are doing here is we're adding up the chronology to figure out where we are in this time period. But there's another verse here, 2 Kings 19:29. And this shall be a sign to you. You shall eat this year such things as grow of themselves, and in the 2nd year, that which springs up from the same, and in the 3rd year, sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat the fruits of them. This is, as many of you already know, is a key verse in understanding it, because right here you're given a 49th year and the 50th year. So this is important. And from this one verse, we can now count every sabbatical year going forward or backward, and every Jubilee year going forward and backward when we count by 49. So this is our benchmark year. This year is 701 BC and is confirmed by both the Assyrian Limu and Eponym lists. The Assyrian lists are the backbone of all chronology, because we can confirm them through astronomical events, and then the Babylonian lists after that we can also confirm, and that brings us down to our time. The period before the Assyrian lists are the ones that are in question. Now I'm going to go quickly through here, so bear with me, because I want to get to the end and I want to be able to have you guys talk about it. So we're going to do this chronology really quick, and it's a review. And so if you got this on video after, you can stop it and pause and quick double check stuff. So the most respected chronologist is Edwin R. Thiel. He wrote the book, The Mysterious Numbers of the Hebrew Kings. And if you don't have it, you should get it, because without the Assyrian chronology, we would not know when the Hebrew kings ever existed. We have no reckoning other than the Assyrian chronology. Now, Edwin R. Thiel states that there are 2 dates in all of the Hebrew chronology that can be confirmed with outside sources. So those 2 dates are what we line up with the Assyrian chronology, and because of that, we know when the Hebrew kings existed. The first one is the Battle of Karkar in 853 BC, in which Ahab dies. That's 1 Kings 22. And that lines up with the Assyrian chronology, which also talks of the same battle. The only other date that ties into other chronologies is 701 BC, when Sennacherib attacks Judah in the 14th year of Hezekiah. And that's what 2 Kings 19:29 is talking about. And that's why this verse is so important, because we now have a connection to a known chronology that is provable, the Assyrian chronology. But 2 Kings 19:29 is talking about a 49th year and a Jubilee year. This is a huge verse. And a lot of these people that do the Sabbatical and Jubilee years leave this one scripture out. They don't want to talk about 2 Kings 19:29. So we have 4 Assyrian chronologies called eponym from 911 BC to 701 BC. We have 7 Assyrian chronologies called Limu from 872 BC to 660 BC. We have Ptolemy's canon of the Babylonian kings from 747 BC to 161 BC. And Ptolemy also had over 80 astronomical readings. So it's by connecting to these chronologies that we're able to determine when 2 Kings 19:29 took place. That's why this is important. So 701 BC is an absolute chronological benchmark in the Israelite history. It's recorded by the Assyrian history and in biblical history. And it's not disputable. Although some people try by using, well, they try. But you cannot unprove this. Again, 2 Kings 19:29. And this is the sign for you. This year you eat what grows of itself. And in the second year, what springs from that. And in the third year, sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat their fruit. So Sennacherib is fighting against the Assyrians, against Judah. And he's off in Lachish and he's fighting out there and he sends his general to take Jerusalem. And Hezekiah is thinking he's about to be killed or destroyed. And he prays to Jehovah. And this is the message that Jehovah sent to Hezekiah. This year, you're going to eat whatever grows of itself. Next year, you're going to do the same thing. Because Hezekiah thought he was about to die. So he's now been promised at least 2 years. And in the third year, sow and reap and plant fruit. So that's 3 years he's going to be promised to live. It goes on in the story of Hezekiah. He's given 15 more years after this to live. Because, he was sick. So the first part of this scripture is talking about 701 BC. This year you eat what grows of itself, 701 BC. And in the second year, what springs from that, that's 700 BC. And in the third year, sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat their fruit. That's 699 BC. Very important dates. Second Kings 19:29 is the second time Jehovah shows you a Jubilee year. He only shows you 2 Jubilee years in the entire Bible. And the other Jubilee year mentioned in the entire Bible is Leviticus 25:2. Those are the only 2 that you have to do this chronology with. And why is that important? So in the New Testament, we have 2 Kings 19:29, a 49th and a 50th year. You can count every sabbatical and jubilee year going forward and backwards from there, and it ties into our chronology today. In the first book of Genesis, you can do the chronology up until Exodus when they enter the land, and you have that chronology, so you have 2 chronologies there, but you can't match them together. How do you match them together? You can't. The only way to match them together is by connecting these 2 Jubilee years. You're given 1 Jubilee in the Genesis chronology, and you're given another Jubilee in 2 Kings to our modern chronology. So you have to somehow connect them together. But there's another step that you got to keep in mind. So by using just the known sabbatical years that I had in 2005, so I had a number of sabbatical, I think I had 12 in 2005, along with 2 Kings 19, we can now know that the next Jubilee year is 2045. We know that is correct. And today, in 2020, we now have 89 sabbatical year proofs. But I'm doing this without those other proofs right now. This is what I had in 2005. I had 12 of these 21, the first 12. So that's all I had, and they all must match. Okay, I'm just giving you a 5-second delay here to catch up to me. So with this knowledge, we can now add up all biblical chronology to know exactly where we are in Jehovah's plan according to his time. Once we connect the 2 Jubilee years together, then we will know whether or not we have 1 or 2 or more Jubilee cycles until the Messiah comes. So that's the important thing here. When is the Messiah coming? Do we have 2 more Jubilee years to go through? Is it 1 more? Is there 5 more? Where are we in that chronology? 2 Kings 19:29 helps you to determine that. But there's one more scripture. Well, before I get there, there's another bunch of slides, I guess. So 1,948 years from the creation of Adam until Abram's birth. We add that to the 80 years when Abram was 80 years old and he made the covenant with Jehovah. Then we have 430 years from the covenant until the Exodus. And we have 480 years from the Exodus until Solomon's 4th year of 967 BC. And from 967 BC, Solomon's 4th year until year 0. 2,020 years from year 0 to today. And when you add that all up, you now have 5,925 years. Okay, so if you want to write these down, add them all up, double check my math. 1948 plus 80 plus 430 plus 480 plus 967 plus 2020 gives you 5,925 years. But the next Jubilee year is 2045, and it is now 25 years away, so we must add that to our total. So you add 25 more years onto that, and that'll bring you to 5,950 years. Okay, you're going to see what I'm doing here in a second, so bear with me. I know numbers upset people, but just bear with me. So some groups are saying we're in the year 6,020. We've just added up the chronology. We got 5,950 years. The Jews say it is 5780. Which one is right? And how do you prove? How do you prove it? Which one is right? Again, the Jubilee years is the key here to understanding this. But we've assumed something in this math equation. We assumed the 6 days of man to be 6,000 years. Now, we have a total of 5,950 years, which would mean that we got 50 more years to go. But this is wrong. We can easily prove the 6,020 year wrong because they are already in the 7th millennium. You can see that. If we're in the 7th millennium, then where's the Messiah? So those people who are going by 6,020 right now, they are obviously wrong. Now, the Jewish calendar is the 5780 right now. And we can also show you that 5780 is wrong just by understanding the Sabbatical and Jubilee year cycles. Now, here's another key verse. Genesis 6:3. Jehovah said, "My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years." Let me just pause here a second. I'm looking at Johan. How are we doing? Am I going too fast? Is that okay? You're still with me?
Oh, yeah.
Kurt, I'm looking at you. You're good? Okay, thank you. I know I'm going quick, but you're going to have this as a video to review afterwards. We're over a half hour starting, and I'm at 35 slide, and I got another 150 to go. Go ahead, who's that?
This is Wilson. Mike J had said earlier it would be helpful potentially if people turned off their videos because you're really choppy, and I don't know if other people are experiencing that or if it's just me, but I have a good connection, I think. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. If you guys want to turn your video off and keep your audio on, it might help with our connection. I didn't know I was coming across choppy. That way I won't get to see your smiling faces, but that's okay.
Joseph?
Yep.
Ross here.
Yep.
Hello?
Go ahead, Ross.
In addition to that, if you leave your if you don't mute the mics and everybody else mutes theirs until they want to speak, maybe put their hand up first. That way you won't get any background. You don't have to block it out and take up more bandwidth.
Okay, Randy, if you got the controls there, just keep everyone's mic muted. We're going to try and keep everyone from talking until I get to the very end, okay? Okay, Genesis will not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So 120 years. The word years in Hebrew is the word shana, and it means periods of time. 120 years is 120 periods of time, or 120 Jubilee cycles. So Jehovah just told us he's going to give man 120 Jubilee cycles. Now we have a simple math equation. Our equation must add up to be 120 Jubilee cycles. We've already added up the years to get 5950 in the year 2045. So 2045, according to what we've just done, has to be 5950. But this is not correct. Okay? I'm throwing you a curveball here, and I'm just letting you know ahead of time. Again, all these sabbatical years here must line up with each other. And they only line up when you count by sevens. That's the only way they all line up. The Jubilee cycles in Leviticus 25:2 and in 2 Kings 19:29 also must match each other. And they only match up when you count by 49s. So you got to connect all these together in order to prove this 120 Jubilee cycle period of time. Now, Pentecost teaches us how to know the Jubilee cycles. Pentecost each year is a reflection of the Jubilee. And you should count, so Leviticus 25:15, talking about the Feast of Pentecost, and you shall count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath, that's the weekly Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be completed. Count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. Then you shall offer a new grain offering to Jehovah. So the new grain offering is done on the 50th day, but that is also the first day of the week. Now, when we compare this to Leviticus 25:8, and you shall count 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself. 7 times 7 years, and the time of the 7th Sabbath of years shall be to you 49 years. And then it goes on to say, on the year after that is the 50th year Jubilee. Exactly the same language as Leviticus 25:15. Now, this is good in theory, but we have to be able to prove it. And this is what we do by knowing the historical Sabbatical and Jubilee year cycles. So we have recorded in history these sabbatical years and 1 Jubilee year. So at the time in 2005 when I was doing this, we only had 1 Jubilee year that we knew of. These are verifiable and non-contested. Okay, just checking my notes here. So all of these years, sabbatical years, only work when you count by 7s between them, or you count 49, 50, 2, 3, 4. You cannot count 49, 50, 1, 2, 3, and continue that way. I urge you to try it. And if you can do that, try it, see if they line up. None of them will line up. Okay, so the counting of years goes 49, 50, or 49, 1, 49, 50, 2, 3, 4, 49, 1, 2, 3, 4. Either way, but it is not 49, is not 49, 50, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I did was I plotted out each sabbatical year and each Jubilee year on Excel, and I started to line them up and see where they fell in relation to each other. So this was the process that I began back then. So here's the year 700 BC and the year 701 BC. And then I lined up the other ones. 456 BC is Nehemiah 8:18. At that time, though, I didn't know 455 was a Jubilee year, because Nehemiah 8:18 doesn't tell us that. So here we have the Maccabean days from Josephus, 134 BC and 162 BC. Again, that's Maccabees, first Maccabees 16:14. And I don't have the scripture for first Maccabees and Josephus Antiquities in my notes, sorry, but they're there. Now we have a sabbatical year in 43 BC, and this is when Julius Caesar issued a decree, and that's mentioned in Josephus Antiquities. We have a sabbatical year in 36 BC, again in Joseph Antiquities 14:16-2. A sabbatical year occurred in 22 BC, again in Joseph Antiquities 15:9-1. A sabbatical year in 42 Common Era, Antiquities, Joseph Antiquities chapter 18. And a sabbatical year in 56 Common Era, and a sabbatical year in 70 Common Era. 56 Common Era is something to do with Nero and a contract. 28 Common Era. Let me get my pencil here. 28 Common Era right here. That is when Yeshua read the scripture in Luke, that Luke talks about the acceptable year. That's when he began his ministry, in the acceptable year. So that's another interesting thing that I learned after doing this. Then we have the sabbatical year of 133 Common Era and 140 Common Era. This is the Bar Kokhba revolt. And it wasn't until recently, what was it, last year? Last year, Jan and I were working on this, and there are 12 contracts. And if we count 134 and then 140, let me just get another pen here and I'll do this. So 134 right here, that's the first year, or that's a Jubilee year. So that is a sabbatical year. So these contracts, what these contracts say, that they will rent the land for 5 years. And I don't know why I didn't see this before, but I only just saw it in the last couple of years with Jan helping me. So there's year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, because there's another sabbatical year, and there's a Jubilee here to start. So this is the Jubilee year, and that's the start of their contracts. And you only got 5 years in the contract, which I thought, why would they only have 5? And this tells me the way that they were counting the sabbatical years. This also confirms another tombstone, which was in based on this counting method here, which, again, it's exciting for me now because I'm just realizing these things. These are part of our 89 sabbatical year proofs. So now that we know when the sabbatical years are and the Jubilee years are, because of 2 Kings 19:29, and because we also understand Genesis 6:3 saying that there are only 120 Jubilee year cycles, our math equation is now this: 120 times 49 equals 5,880 years. 5,880 years is the total number of years allotted to man, also known as the 6th millennium. So 120 times 49 is 5,880 years. But our first edition of the chronology that we added up was 5,950 years, and that was until 2045. So something is wrong with our chronology. We are over by 70 years already, and we still have to get to 2045. So we got to go back and look at our chronology because there's something missing there. our equation. This is our equation. We must line up with our equation. Okay, so we're still 2045. We know it's the next Jubilee year. Right now, we haven't figured out which one it is. But I'm starting to get the idea that 2045 will be the 120th Jubilee year, because we're already told there's only going to be 120 of them, and our math has already surpassed that. Then, if 2045 is the next Jubilee year, and there are only 5,880 years in 120 Jubilee year cycles, 25 being the first year of the next cycle, which would make it 5,881. That means we are now in the year 5856. It also means this year is 120th, or the last or final Jubilee cycle of the 6th millennium. That's something we can determine just from what we know already. So we know this first section to be true, from the creation of Adam until the Exodus. We know that's correct. It's 1948 for Abraham, 80 years to the covenant, and then 430 years from the covenant to the Exodus. That part we know is right. Then we add on 480. That part we don't know yet if that's correct. But the part from 967 until 2045, we know that that part is correct. But our total is wrong here. 5,950 years, that is wrong. So again, we know that the bottom part of this equation is correct. 967 plus 2045, we know that to be correct. So when we look at the period of the Judges, there is a great deal of confusion about this time period, which is surmised as being 480 years. The book of Acts 13, 19, 20 claims this period of the Judges was 450 years from the entry into the land until Samuel. 1 Kings 6:1 says it is 480 years from the Exodus to the 4th year of Solomon. Josephus says it was 592 years. Which one is right? So then if we've only got these people as our references, then we're kind of in trouble. But we have more references. The Septuagint says it was 440 years. Glycus says it was 330 years. Melchor says it was 590 years. Sulpicus Severus, 588 years. Clemens of Alexandria says it's 570 years. Cedrinus, 672. Cardomanus, 598. Voitius and Capella, 580 years. Sirius, 680 years. Nicholas Abram, 527 years. Mestilinus, 592 years. Petavius and Valtherus, 520 years. And our most modern historian, K.A. Kitchen, was about 300 years. So which of these ones is correct? We do not have a second witness for the 480 years mentioned in 1 Kings 6:1. So which one's correct? So that is the variable that we have to figure out. So what I've done in this math equation is I've taken the first part that I know is correct, the 1948 plus 80 plus 430. I've left the 480, I've made it X. I've made it the variable here that we don't know. Then from Solomon to when the time changes, 967. And then from that time to the end of this Jubilee cycle, the next Jubilee is 2045. And that all must add up to be 5881. So then we just do the math equation and move the X to the other side. And we get 5881, take away 5470. And that leaves us with 411 equals X. There is no year 0, so we add another year. That gives us 412 as being X. So by doing the math here, I'm leaving it up here, you can write it down if you want. By doing the math, the year that the 1 Kings 6:1 says is 480 is incorrect. And it's 412 years. Again, we must add everything up to be 120 Shana or periods of time. Now, if you leave it as 480 years, then you will never figure out the chronology. Nothing makes sense. It doesn't fit together. But when you use the 412 instead of 480, all the sabbatical and jubilee years line up. Everything matches. Genesis 6:3, 120 jubilee cycles, 5,881 years to the next jubilee year of 2045. Everything fits. Okay, so I'm leaving that there for another second because we do have to get going. How do we prove 412 is correct then? We already know one Jubilee year in 701 BC. We also know that in Leviticus 25:2 was another Jubilee year mentioned in the Bible. That's the only two that we have. The year they entered the land, which was 2,500 years after creation. So we must compare one chronology from Adam until the year, from Adam until they entered the land. Hang on, let me read this again. We must compare one chronology from Adam until the year 580 years or 120 Jubilee cycles with our modern chronology going from Solomon until our time now. So it's just like using a slide rule to solve an equation. And on this slide rule, the 2 points are the two Jubilee years that we know about. 2 Kings 19:29 and Leviticus 25:2. And those two must line up with each other and fit within the 5,880 years. So the only 2 points on that slide rule that we have, are the two Jubilee cycles. Once we line them up, counting by 49, then we will see how many years are in between the dates in question. Is it 480 years or 412? So here's the one, 2 Kings 19:29 of 701 BC. And when we count this going back, we come to the Exodus, and the year they entered the land is 2,500 years after creation. So again, what I had to do here is I've got two separate charts. Now let me go back here. I've done this on the chronology on Gregorian calendar dates with BC years, going all the way back. And so I counted 5,880 of them to figure this out. But when I do the other chronology, counting from Adam, I don't have the BC dates to use. I only have the dates starting from the creation of Adam. So 2,500 years after the creation of Adam is when they entered the land in a Jubilee year. So that's what I have to line up here. Again, you can do this. So I made two different charts for this, right? I've created two charts. One using the Gregorian years, BC and Common Era. That's the ones on the left-hand side. Let me get my pencil out here again. That's this side over here. And this includes our modern time of 2020. And so our equation says that the 5,880 years, which is right here, has to line up with our year here. And the 5,881 year must line up with the 2045 over here. So now I've got 5,880 years in our modern last Jubilee cycle on the left-hand side, lining up with the one on the right. Then I go back to the beginning and I count from Adam, which is year one right here. And I have a match. I've now lined up both charts on both sides using Excel, and I have the entire 5,880 years of mankind right here. So having now matched up our two chronologies by using the Sabbatical and Jubilee cycles to do it, we now can plainly see that the year of the Exodus was 1379 BC, and Solomon's fourth year, his reign, was 967 BC. And the difference in years is 412 years, not 480 years. So that's, there's a bit of work to figure this out, but I'm showing you this so that you can understand it. Play the video over again and listen to it again and just go through it slowly. This is important because if we don't know this, then we don't know where we are today in that chronology of Jehovah. The current year is 5780 according to the Jewish calendar. So now we're going to disprove this. I'm saying that this year at Aviv in 2020 is 5856. There's a difference of 76 years. So I'll quickly go through this. And the answer to why there's a difference is found here in Matthew 1:8. Matthew 1:7, Solomon begat Rehoboam, Rehoboam begat Abijah, Abijah begat Asa, Asa begat Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat begat Joram, and Joram begat Uzziah. Uzziah begat Jotham, and Jotham begat Ahaz, and Ahaz begat Hezekiah. And the answer is right there, but what you don't see is what it has left out. Matthew 1:8 leaves off the names of Ahaziah, who reigned 1 year, Athaliah, who reigned 6 years, and Jehoash, who reigned 40 years, and Amaziah, who reigned 29 years. These four kings are all missing in the Matthew chronology, and they add up to be 76 years in total. Why were they left off? Deuteronomy 29:20. Jehovah would not forgive him, but rather the displeasure of Jehovah and his jealousy shall burn against that man, and every curse that is written in this book shall be settled on him, and Jehovah shall blot out his name from under the heavens. And then in Exodus 20 verse 5, you do not bow down to them nor serve them, for speaking about the Baals, for I, Jehovah, your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing kindness to thousands of those who love me and guard my commandments. Okay, so this is right there at Mount Sinai, the 10 Commandments right here. The third and fourth generation will be blotted out. And that's what's happened to this king, these four kings. Their names have been blotted out. And we're missing the 76 years. So I'm going to skip through here because we're short on time. Yeah, it's now an hour. And we got lots yet to cover. So I'm not going to get into that story there. The half-year difference is because the Jews start the year at Tishri in the fall, and we begin our year at Aviv in the spring. So there's always going to be a half-year difference. So right now, we are currently in the Jubilee cycle. The last Jubilee year was 1996. That was 119th Jubilee cycle. And the next Jubilee year of 2045 will be the 120th Jubilee year. And we're in the year 2020. They're in yellow in the middle. So in this chart here, what I was showing the people at that time was that there are four curses found in Leviticus 26. And the first curse started in 1996 with terror and terrorism. And it does not go away when the first 7 years is over. It's added to the second one, which was severe weather or drought. I called it drought at that time. That starts in the second sabbatical year of 2003 to 2009. But it doesn't go away either. It is added to the third one, which I called pestilence. And it started in 2010 and goes to 2016. But it continues on until these five curses have all been put upon mankind. Now, you guys have experienced this all around the world. In all the countries you're in, you experience terrorism, severe weather. You know, Australia just went through this extreme fire season, California before them. And now we're in this period of pestilence right now. The fourth cycle, the fourth curse, begins in 2017, and it continues until the end of this period of 2033. We'll get to that later as I explain this. But the fourth curse is a sword. But what I'm missing and what I continued to miss was this fourth curse when you read Leviticus 26 is pestilence and sword and famine. It's right there all the time. And then the fifth curse starting in 2024 is the curse of captivity. So this is what I was showing. This is how I was trying to explain things back then. Now, another little exercise that I did was I was trying to understand the fall holy days. How do the fall holy days fit into the plan of Jehovah? We know that Passover, Yeshua was killed on Passover. 7 days of unleavened bread, the first day of unleavened bread, the Passover day he's killed or he's put into the grave. That's also the day the Israelites had the Passover happen to them. The seventh day of unleavened bread was the Exodus out of Egypt when the Red Sea closes in on top of them. Then we have Shavuot. We have the law given on Shavuot, and then the Holy Spirit given on Shavuot. So how do the fall holy days, the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles, and the 8th day, how do they all fit in here? So just as an experiment, instead of the 7th month being from the first day of the Feast of Trumpets until the 22nd day of the 8th day, I said, well, let's just do a day for a year. And I made the 8th day, because it lines up with the Jubilee year, I made the 8th day the Jubilee year. So the 8th day is now 2045. And it's now not just a day, it's a year. And then I counted backwards. So the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacles is 2044. The first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, let me get my pen here. The first day of the Feast of Tabernacles right here would be 2038. We continue counting back to the Day of Atonement, and that's 2033. Whoops. $2033. And then count back further, you come to 2024 as the Feast of Trumpets. And I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know what that means, but I also know that in between the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement is what they call Shabbat Shuvah. And it is the Shabbat, or the sabbatical year in this case, that falls in between Feast of Trumpets and Day of Atonement. And I'm just doing an experiment. I'm looking for something here, and I don't know what it is that I'm looking for, and I'm just checking. So that's what I saw. And okay, so what does that mean? At this point, when I'm doing this, I don't know yet. So right here, I also did this chart. Again, I'm going back, I'm taking it back to 2005. I'm trying to understand what's going on, what I'm learning here. We have the first millennium right here. And you count by 49 periods of 49 years, and we get 20 of them equaling 980 down here. That's one millennial day. The second millennial day is the same thing. Then we come to the third and the fourth and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth millennial day, and we have 5,880 years, which is the equation that we've just worked out. When we count by 49s and we do that 6 times. We have the 7th millennium here, which Hebrews 4 talks about, the millennium of rest. We want to enter that rest. Okay? So I'm looking at all this stuff and I'm trying to understand this. So what I did then was I took the same Jubilee cycle and I did it in the Gregorian years. And we're right here in 2020. Right here, near the end of the 6th millennium and the start of the 7th millennium. Now let me point out something to you. We're going to point this out again. Solomon began to build the temple in 967. That's right in here. Right in this time period. The temple was here for the entire 4th millennial day. In 70 AD, the temple is destroyed, right in here. The end of the 4th millennial day was in 84, 14 years after the temple was destroyed. I'm noticing interesting things now. I'm starting to see patterns, and it is these patterns that I want you to pay attention to. We'll come back to this here in a bit. Yeshua was killed in 31 AD on this 4th millennial day. The temple was destroyed on the 4th millennial day. The 4th day, Yeshua was killed on the 4th day of the week, on Wednesday, the 14th of Nisan. Again, what are we seeing? We're seeing patterns. What are we looking at? I'm showing you the progression of understanding that I've gained from doing this. We are in the last Jubilee cycle before the Messiah returns. 2020 is 5856 from the creation of Adam. This leaves just 25 years until the 120th Jubilee year in 2045 and the start of the 7th millennium. But Matthew 24:22 says, unless those days were shortened, no flesh will be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. What does that mean in relation to all of this? Okay, those days have, so instead of those days being shortened, it's years, a day for a year in prophecy. Those years are shortened. How does that fit in here? Another thing that I saw, in the 4th generation, your descendants will come back. This is the promise that Jehovah made to Abraham when he made the covenant with him in Genesis 15. For the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. That in the 4th generation, verse 16, that word is door, and it comes from the meaning a revolution of time. That is an age or generation. So what Jehovah is saying here in Genesis 15 is, in the 4th revolution of time, your descendants will come back here. Jehovah just told Abram that in 4 revolutions of time, he would bring us back to the land of Israel. Jehovah said this when he made the covenant with Abraham in the year 1809 BC. This is why it's important to understand and be able to do this chronology. In 1809 BC, when the covenant was made, when Abram was 80 years old, or another way of looking at it is the year 2028 after the creation of Adam. So right here, what year was that? 2028 after the creation of Adam. That's right here where I've got the arrow. At the start of the 3rd millennial day, right here. 4 millennial days later, or 4 revolutions of time later, brings us to the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th. 1, 2, 3, 4 revolutions of time, and we are here in the year 2020, right here. We are at the end of the 4th time that Jehovah told Abraham he would bring us back to the land. That's how close we are to the end of this age right now. That's why you're seeing all these things happening around the world that have been happening for a number of years, but we weren't tuned into it because we've been told it's just global warming. We've been lied to. Okay, so let's keep on going. The year, oh, so here we are in the year 1809 and the year 2020. Again, I just showed it with the arrows. Now I've got it here written in already prepared for you. 4 generations of prophecy is what Jehovah is doing. 4 revolutions of time. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are not yet done. That's what Jehovah is doing. Is he real? Did he really say that to Abraham? Is it really happening in our time now? Is this what we're going to see? That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times. And what I'm showing you today is not new stuff. It's already been shown back then. And we're just rediscovering it now. So Abram is told, Jehovah tells Pharaoh in a dream that Abraham is a prophet. So what did Abraham prophesy? Many people will say the sacrifice of Isaac was a prophecy of the Messiah coming. Yeah, but what else? Name some other stuff. So this is what I'm going to show you. Again, some of this is review, and for some of you, this is brand new stuff. So here is the Jubilee cycle of Abraham. let's see. Genesis 12 takes place in the year 2023 when Abram leaves Haran. Genesis 13 happens during the 2024 to 2026 period on the on our chart here, right here. Genesis 15 takes place in 2028. That's a covenant made with Jehovah. That's right here. Genesis 16 takes place from 2033 to 2034. Again, that's this time period right in here. Talking about Hagar and the birth of Ishmael. Chapter 17 to 21 is when Sodom is destroyed and the birth of Isaac in 2047 and 2048. So here's Sodom being destroyed and the birth of Isaac right here. So when you read Genesis, these are the dates you got to keep in mind. How are these prophetic? Just looking at this alone does not tell us anything. It is only when you begin to compare this stuff to the other Jubilee cycles that we see once we've done the charts here that it begins to make sense. Okay, I'm going to skip this. So what I'm talking about here is that the trial for Nimrod by Shem. We get this from our ancient Greek, Persian, and Babylonian mythology and Egyptian mythology. And it took me a long time to learn this and understand and figure it out and plot it all out. But Alexander Hislop in the Two Babylons is a great source for helping to sort this out. But anyway, Nimrod is tried for 10 years. And at the end of that 10 years, Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed. And that's what this period of time represents here. Again, it's just something that I learned, excuse me, and it takes a long, it'll take up too much time to explain it all here today. So the 10 years that Shem had Nimrod on trial are represented by this purple period of time, culminating with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah in 2047. Okay. So trying to understand how the fall holy days fit into this and end up this end time Jubilee, I conducted this experiment that I've already explained to you, and I'm repeating myself here now. And I didn't realize I already got this in my notes. But here's the clue that I had in Luke 17. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the last days of the Son of Man. What does that mean? Well, a lot of people say, you know, they were marrying, drinking, and carousing around. That's not what this is talking about, although this is what Luke says. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. But the day Lot also as in it was in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But the day Lot went out from Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from the heavens and destroyed them all. Even so shall it be in the days when the Son of Man is revealed. So this is talking about our time period today, the 120th Jubilee cycle. And it's saying to look at the time of Sodom and Gomorrah. And what do I see here? So again, what we did was we counted back the holy days, and we ended up with 2033 lining up to be the Day of Atonement. Well, when I do that and I compare our Jubilee cycle to this time here, I see that 2047, when Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed, matches the sixth sabbatical cycle in our time when Satan is to be destroyed. That's what the Day of Atonement represents. Well, I thought that was really interesting. So then I go and I compare that again, the Day of Atonement. Well, it matches the year here just before the flood. So something is happening here telling me to look at this time period when judgment is executed on the world, on Sodom and Gomorrah, and on the earth in Noah's flood. Okay, just so you know, I was there, one of the best trips I ever had. We were supposed to go there this year. We should have been there right about now, but this coronavirus has messed that up. So Jehovah does not change, and therefore his punishments also will be the same, and they are given out in the same order throughout history. So if Jehovah doesn't change and his Jubilee cycles are the same, then there's something going on in judgment connecting 2033 in our time with 2047. And even though it's a couple days later, I'm getting feedback there, Randy, if you can mute everybody again. Lining up and telling us something. I still got feedback, Randy. Please, everyone, just keep your mics muted until we're done here, so I can get through this all.
I don't know why I'm mute.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you, whoever you are. Okay, please mute your mic. So the sixth sabbatical cycle is showing us something about the day of judgment that Luke is talking about. 2033 is the year Satan is to be locked up. That's what the Day of Atonement represents. And the Day of Atonement, and that happens at the end of the tribulation of 3.5 years. And we have the 7 years of captivity starting in 2024. So we're starting to see something going on in our Jubilee cycle now. And we're trying to put this together. We're trying to figure it all out. Randy, please mute everybody again. Again, we're looking at Luke 17. And we're just trying to understand, what are we being told? Well, then I did something else. I went to the time of Joseph's Jubilee cycle. And again, I saw something. I've still got somebody unmuted here. So we have at the end of Joseph's 7 years of famine in 2243, also lining up and matching our time of 2033.
Microphone is muted. Now it's on.
So we have another thing going on here.
It's jumping to mute. Look, it's gone again, hasn't it?
No.
Well, tell me when it has.
Hands off your computers. Put them in the air. Don't anybody touch anything. Thank you, Randy, for looking after this. Again, so we have another thing going on here. But these 7 years of famine started 7 years earlier, which would be our, right here, 2237, which lines up with our year 2027. Okay, so what's going on now? What is this prophecy of Abraham? What is it being shown to us here? Again, I compared the time of Joseph right here with the time of Sodom and Gomorrah right here, and the time of Noah down here. They're all taking place in the 6th sabbatical cycle. But there's more here in the time of Joseph for us to learn from. Now, I almost missed this. But my friend Stephen Spikerman in England, he told me to go back and look at this again. And once I looked at it, because, you know, the sabbatical, 7 years of famine and 7 years of plenty for Egypt, they did not match a sabbatical cycle. They start at the beginning or in the middle, and they end in the middle. And it didn't make sense to me at the time, but Stephen told me to go do this again. So I did. And I was stunned at how they matched up. You'll notice that the 7 years of plenty here, 2230, line up with the 2020 in our cycle. And this is what the prophecies of Abraham show us by comparing the Jubilee cycle of Abraham, the Jubilee cycle of Isaac and Jacob and Joseph, the Jubilee cycle of Noah. We get these teachings or understandings about what's going on in our time now. So 3.5 years before 2033 is Passover 2030. That is the Shabbat Shuvah, the return, O Israel. The half-Torah reading is return, O Israel, return to the land. This return to the land, well, that's a time to flee. What is that showing us? Yeah, I'm giving you little clues here. This all makes sense here at the end. Revelation 11, verse 3, and I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days clothed in sackcloth. 1,260 days. That's 3.5 years. These have authority to shut up the heaven, that it may not rain in the days of their prophecy. And they have authority over waters to turn them into blood, and to strike the earth with every plague as often as they desire. Verse 7. And when they complete their testimony, the beast coming up out of the abyss will make war against them and will overcome them and kill them. That takes place, their killing takes place at Passover in 2030. Those 2 witnesses start their work at the Feast of Trumpets here in 2026. From 2030, for 3.5 years, is the Great Tribulation. And at the end of it, Satan is locked away. And the 144,000 have to go through that. What is going on here? What am I seeing here? Starting in 2026. Well, 2026 is around 2236 in Joseph's time. But that's the start of the 7 years of famine. They have drought for 3 years. And then the tribulation. That matches the 7 years of famine in Joseph's time. What are we seeing here? What's being shown to us? The 2 witnesses avenge, right? They avenge the deaths of the saints. Well, when did the saints die? Where's that? We haven't come to that yet. Right now, we're progressing backwards here. Revelation 6:9. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, Until when, Master and holy and true, do you not judge and avenge? A key word, avenge, right here. Avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth. Avenge. Who's going to avenge us? The two witnesses are called to avenge the saints. I need the mic's muted again, Randy. The two witnesses begin to avenge the saints. Well, okay, hang on. Let's go back a verse. These saints are under the altar. They're dead. They're dead. So these saints are dead before 2026, when the two witnesses begin to avenge them. Okay. Well, what's going on now? We have to go someplace else to figure this out. Daniel 8, starting verse 7. And I saw him come down close beside the ram, and he moved with anger against him, and struck the ram, and shattered his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he threw him down to the ground and stamped on him, and none could deliver the ram out of his hand. Then the he-goat became very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and in its place came up four outstanding ones towards the four winds of the heavens. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which became very great toward the south and towards the east and towards the bountiful land. And it became great, even to the host of heaven, and it made fall some of the host of the stars to the ground and trampled them. What's this? What did we just read? And it became great. That nation became great, even to the host of heaven. And it made fall some of the hosts of the stars. These are the saints that are going to be killed and trampled. Verse 11. Yea, he magnified himself even to the ruler of the hosts. And the daily sacrifice was taken away by him, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And an army was given to him against the daily sacrifice because of transgression, and it cast truth to the ground, and it worked and succeeded. Verse 13, then I heard a certain holy one speaking, and another one, mute again, Randy. Then I heard a certain holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that one who spoke, until when shall the vision last concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of that astounds, to give both the sanctuary, which can also be translated as saints, and should be translated as saints, and the host, which is the host of Israel, to be trampled. Daniel 8:14. And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary, the saints, shall be vindicated. So here's that word again. We have the vindication of the saints in Revelation 11. We have the vindication of the saints here in Daniel 8. And we have the two witnesses vindicating the saints. This is when the second Exodus takes place. Now, we wrote about the second Exodus this week, but I'm not talking about that today specifically. But I gave you that as that newsletter is about this one slide. So I'm not going to repeat what's in that newsletter. So we have the two witnesses beginning their work in 2026 at the Feast of Trumpets and going for 3.5 years until Passover in 2030, when they're killed. It shall not rain for the entire 3.5 years. And that lines up with the time of Joseph's Jubilee cycle of going for 7 years of famine. But in Jacob's Jubilee cycle, we have another little bit of information. Jacob worked to marry Rachel for 7 years. And at the end of those 7 years, he was deceived by Laban and he was given Leah. Right here. 1646. Leah was the surprise that Jacob wasn't expecting. He was deceived. So what this is showing me is that at 2030, when we go back to Jerusalem, when we are fleeing back to Jerusalem during the second Exodus, we're going to get there and we're going to be deceived. Satan and the world is going to allow us to go back to Jerusalem during the time of the two witnesses in order for them to let the rain start again. Is during this time, 1/4 of the earth's population dies. So they give in and let us come back to the land at that time. Not because they want us to come back to the land, but so they can get us all in one place so they can kill us all at once. Again, we read that in Revelation, that the beast goes after the woman and the earth opens up and swallows the beast. And then he turns and makes war on the remnant. He's already killed the two witnesses. Now he's trying to kill those women that are fleeing into Moab. But the earth protects them. But the rest of the people who did not flee, he goes and makes war with those who keep the commandments. And again, I keep telling you, we have this problem of the calendar again this year. A difference of 30 days. One group will flee at the proper time and the other group will be left behind thinking they're keeping Passover 30 days later. And they'll be executed then by the beast power. So this is what the Jubilee cycles are showing me from here. Again, the fourth curse of Leviticus 26. And if by these things you are not reformed by me, but walk contrary to me, then I also will walk contrary to you. And I will punish you yet 7 times for your sins. And I will bring a sword against you. That's the one curse. That will execute the vengeance of the covenant. Those people who do not keep the covenant of Mount Sinai. When you are gathered together within your cities, I will send the pestilence. This verse has now got my complete attention because you are all locked in your homes right now, wherever you are around the world. I will send the pestilence among you. You shall be delivered into the hand of the enemy. When I have cut off your supply of bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in one oven. And I get upset at this verse because I keep thinking, why would anybody have 10 women in one house, in one kitchen? Just having 1 or 2 in the kitchen is bad enough. Why would you want 10? Anyway, I make light of it because these are serious times we're in. This is the famine that it's talking about. So right here in this one verse, the fourth curse, you have the sword, you have pestilence, and you have famine. And right now here in Canada, we have people already on the news who do not have food to buy while they're locked in this quarantine. We have other people right now here in Canada who do not have the money to pay their rent because they're not working. And they're questioning, do I pay the rent or do I buy food? And if they don't have the money to buy food, what are they going to do? We're entering into a famine stage and we got lots of food in the stores. But in some places they have had a run on the store. We are very interesting times. So going back to Daniel 8, when we count from trumpets in 2026 and we count back 2,300 days, that brings you to Shavuot 2020. And right now, according to our schedule, we are on the 14th day of the count to Shavuot. that means that we have, 36 days left until Shavuot. So I did something else. Okay, I'm going back to my Prophecies of Abraham teaching, and I look at this fourth year, this middle year of 2020, and I start to compare it to see what I'm seeing. And I see that it lines up with the time when Ishmael is born in Abraham's day. And I thought that was interesting. And I'm wondering, what does that mean? Does that mean that Ishmael is going to become a nation at that time? Is that when he breaks the yoke off his back, that which is the blessing that Isaac gave to Ishmael after Jacob supposedly stole his blessing? In the last days, you shall break off the yoke of your brother. Is that when this takes place? We have the Arabs right now, right today, causing the price of oil to crash. And oil is now, I think, down to around $5 a barrel here in Canada. We need at least $7 a barrel in order to make it worthwhile to even take it out of the ground. That's as of the news yesterday. What does this mean here? So again, I'm matching up our Jubilee cycle with the time of Abraham. And I'm seeing different patterns develop. Again, the 2020, which is the start of these 2,300 days, lines up with, in the time of Joseph, with 2230. Okay, but Joseph said these are 7 years of plenty, but this is, I'm talking about a recession happening to us right now, or even a depression right now, because this is not going to end in 2 weeks' time. This virus that's going around will not be over in 2 weeks' time. Because there are still people, my sister-in-law called this morning. She's very upset. She works at the Liquor Control Board here in Canada, or in Ontario, and the store is packed. And yesterday when we drove past the liquor store here in my town, the parking lot was full. They have deemed it an essential business. People are going in there buying, a case of beer. Since when is a case of beer essential business? This pandemic is not being contained. It's not being stopped. It's being spread. She's worried about catching it because everyone's lined up tight inside the liquor store. It's not going to be over in 14 days. It's not going to be over in a month. This could last a couple months until we start getting high death rates in all our countries, like Italy. Until that starts to happen, until we break the back of our leaders and have everyone in a complete lockdown, only then will this thing be broken. But this is 7 years of plenty, and this is for Egypt. Well, who's Egypt today? Egypt today is the European Union. Do I go into that? Yeah, I do here in a minute. Okay, so I won't get too far ahead of me. Egypt is the European Union. So Egypt, the EU is going to have 7 years of plenty here, starting in 2020. Those of you in the stock market, take note. Something's going to happen here. The power is going to switch from the US to the EU. Which stock market are you invested in? Then we go to Daniel 9. And this is, many of you already know this. In Daniel 9 are the 70 weeks of prophecy. Starting Daniel 9, verse 24. 70 weeks are determined for your people. So we, in our book, The 2300 Days of Hell, show you who the people of Daniel are. 250 pages of teaching there, showing you that the Anglo-Saxon people today are the descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Well, that hasn't happened yet. This is not speaking about Jesus coming in 30 or 28 AD. Verse 25, know therefore and understand. You are commanded to know and to understand that from the going forth of the command. When did that command go forth? This is not talking about Ahasuerus and the Persian kings. Speaking to Nehemiah, this is not talking about that time period. This is talking about the time period when Jehovah told Moses to go and get the people. That took place right around here in 1383 BC. Again, that's approximate time. The Exodus takes place here in 1379 BC. And the curse of the wanderings in the wilderness takes place here at 1377 BC, 2 years after the Exodus. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command around 1383 BC to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince. That Messiah, now I don't have that slide here, that Messiah is King David. Until Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks or 7 Jubilee cycles. So you count from 1383 BC, count 7 Jubilee cycles, and you arrive at the year 1040 BC, the exact year that King David was born. And then you're told to count from that 62 weeks. And during this time, the street shall be built again and the wall, even in troublesome times. And King David rebuilt the wall that had fallen down after Shem had ruled in Jerusalem. Shem was Melchizedek. David got the city back from the Jebusites. He restored the walls. He restored the moat, which is called the Milo. And he restored the ramparts. 62 Jubilee cycles later, or if you count 69 Jubilee cycles from the going forth of the command, brings you to 1996. This is our Jubilee cycle right here. Daniel is talking about us. This is the 70th week right here. Whoops. Anyway, okay. And after 62 weeks, Messiah, that's the anointed, the Mashiach, shall be cut off. Who is that? The Mashiach is Israel, all 12 tribes, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city. And the word sanctuary here is saints. Shall destroy the city and the saints. And the end of it shall be with a flood. Until the end of the war, desolations are determined. Then they shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, 149-year period. And we've shown you that the covenant made with many is the United Nations Environmental Program, started in 1972. We're going to show you something else here in a minute too about that. But in the middle of the week, the middle of this 70th week, 2020, he shall bring an end to prayers and offerings. It says sacrifice and offering. I said prayers and offerings. And on the wings of abomination shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consumption which is determined is poured out on the desolate. In the middle of this week, Israel is going to be cut off, or starting to be cut off. Again, the middle of that 70th Shabua is 2020. That's the time we're in right now. And look what's happening to the whole world right now. Now I'm comparing this to Abraham's time when Ishmael was born, and I'm looking for something here to understand and learn. And I'm wondering what that will be. Because the Arabs are going to control the world at the end for a little while. What's going to happen at this time? Is this correct? Am I understanding this correctly? I don't know. We have the Babylonian Empire, which is spoken of in Daniel, the very first empire, the head of the beast of gold, the gold section of the image. Then we have the Medo-Persian Empire, the second beast of Daniel, which is the silver section of the great image. Then we have the Macedonian Empire, Daniel's third beast with brass of the great image. Then we have the Abbasid dynasty from 750 to 1258. I'm just showing this in here. Daniel's not talking about it, but I'm just showing you it. This is the Arab Empire. This is again the Arab Empire during the Ottoman days, which just recently ended in, I believe it was 1916, if I remember correctly. And here we have the Roman Empire. And you'll notice that each of these empires overlapped the preceding one. This is the one with the two legs, spoken of in the image of Daniel. This empire is continuing today under the European Union, but it has not yet reached this stage. It's about to, though, when it fights against the king of the south. The king of the north is Europe. The king of the south is the Islamic nations. So that is a war that I'm expecting to start to kick off these 2,300 days of Daniel 8 that we were talking about. Okay, so I'm going quickly because we're, our time is, we're at 2 hours. We're coming up on 2 hours already, but we're almost there. So when you combine a united Europe with the Muslim forces of the Middle East, just as Hitler was trying to do in World War II with the Muslim Brotherhood in 1938, we have a terrifying army that is coming up here. Right now on the news, you may have heard that Turkey opened up its borders to send, and I can't remember the number, but I want to say another 3 million people up to Germany. They're talking about using the cruise ships and taking them there. They're talking about flying them there, and Germany is inviting them to come to Germany. What are they going to do with these millions of young Muslim men? This is what Daniel 11 is talking about. This empire will convert from worshiping Mary to worshiping a God its fathers did not know. That's Islam. Islam only started here in the 700s AD. And Mary worship, or the worship of Semiramis, has been going on since the days of Nimrod. Mary worship is Catholicism today. So Germany is converting to Islam. And can you imagine that coming against us in these last days? This is going to be terrifying. So that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm seeing here when I compare Abraham's time when Ishmael is born in 2034. Again, I don't have any proof of this. The proof will be in hindsight. And that lines up with our 2020. In Revelations, it says, what verse am I reading here? Revelation 20, verse 4. And I saw thrones, and I've already read this, and they sat on them. A judgment was committed to them. Then I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for their witness to Yeshua and for the word of Jehovah, who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received the mark of their foreheads or on their hands. And I've showed you in another newsletter this mark on the forehead. This is bandana that has these words in Arabic, and the mark on their hands is a ribbon around their arms saying the same thing, that they are followers of Islam. And they lived and reigned with Messiah for 1,000 years. So who is it that beheads people today? We saw this during the ISIS crisis. Now here, consider also the following prophecy of Isaiah. the only way for Assyria, Germany, to be broken on the mountains of Israel in Jehovah's land is for them to be in the land of Israel, imposing their yoke of bondage upon the shoulders of the Israelites. So Isaiah says in Isaiah, where am I reading here? Isaiah 29. No. I'm sorry, I've lost it. Oh, well, I'll just read it. Jehovah has sworn, this is verse 24. I don't know what chapter I'm in right now. I don't have it here. Isaiah, whatever chapter, verse 24. Jehovah has sworn, saying, surely I have thought, so it shall come to pass, and as I have purposed, so it shall stand, that I will break the Assyrian in my land, on my mountains, tread him underfoot. Then his yoke shall be removed from them, and his burden removed from their shoulders. So now I'm reading Genesis 49, 22 to 23. Joseph is a fruitful bow, a fruitful bow by a well. His branches run over the wall. The archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. Joseph is the United States and the USA, Australia, United Kingdom. And they're about to be bitterly grieved. Okay, I need to mute again there, Randy. The arrows of the archer. Now I'm reading Isaiah 29, verses 1 to 8. No, and then focus on verse 5. Moreover, the multitude of your foes shall be like fine dust, and the multitude of terrible ones like chaff. They pass away. Yes, they shall be in an instant, suddenly. I don't know why that's there. I'm sorry, my notes are, I thought I checked this out. The archers, if you read Zechariah 5, the archers are the flying scroll with the stork wings and the two women. The word women is the same as fire. So there's two fires coming out of these flying scrolls. These are missiles that are projected to be flying here. And we're going to have a nuclear war very soon. What precipitates this, what starts this in 2020, I don't know. But I believe it has something to do with the Arabs and them taking control. But I'm not sure exactly what that is. Another thing I wanted to point out to you is that Israel fell in 723 BC. 723 BC, this is the fourth sabbatical cycle. Now, some people say it's 422. I have some leading authorities say 723. So I'm going to go with them. That's when they fell. It's a fourth cycle. 723 is right here in the fourth millennium. The temple was destroyed in the fourth millennium in 70 AD, right here. Yeshua was killed in 31 AD. Yeshua, again, the fourth day of the week, or the fourth millennial day. When we look at the time when Yeshua was killed, he was killed, now this is the second month according to the Torah calendar, but it's 31 common era. That's the only time that lines up here is the second month. The Torah calendar did not have an extra year or extra month that year. But Passover on the fourth day of the week is when Yeshua was killed. Interesting. All these things are lining up. And here we are in the fourth millennium, or the fourth sabbatical cycle, right here. Jeremiah 16, verse 16, behold, I will send many fishermen, says Jehovah, and they shall fish them. That's what I've been doing. That's what we've been doing. We put the word out there. We hope people bite it. And I hope they come into the faith and repent and begin to obey Jehovah. These are the fishermen. That's what the apostles were, right? Fishers of men. Jeremiah 16, 16. And afterwards I will send many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and every hill, and out of the holes of the rocks. So Matthew 4:19. Then he said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. That's what I'm doing. That's what we're doing here. So the hunters, who are the hunters? Genesis 10:9. He was a mighty hunter before Jehovah. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Jehovah. The Babylonian system that Nimrod founded are the hunters. Genesis 25:27. So the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a mild man dwelling in tents. Proverbs 6:5. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, and like a bird from the hand of the fowler. We're going to talk about that here in a minute again. Ezekiel 13:21. Your kerchiefs also will I tear, and deliver my people out of your hand, and they shall be no more in your hand to be hunted. We are going to be hunted, and that is about to begin. Israel is about to be hunted, and the fishermen, they have not come back to. They could have, they had the choice. Now the hunters are going to take over, and the hunters shoot first and ask questions later. Now we also had the blood moons at Passover in 2014. We had the blood moons at Sukkot in 2014. We had a blood moon at Passover in 2015 and a blood moon at Sukkot in 2015. 2016, we had a dispute, and we kept Passover early that year while everyone else went to an extra 30 days. We had a dark moon at Passover that year and a dark moon at Sukkot that year. And I didn't declare the year Aviv that year. Nehemiah Gordon showed us that the barley was Aviv on Wave Sheaf Day. So we know that these dates are right. Now, what does this mean? If the eclipse fall at regular intervals, how can we relate them to our behavior and our responsibilities? So this is an explanation of what a blood moon and a dark moon means according to Jewish mythology. And I understand where they get this from because we've also done it, trace them all the way back to falling. The blood moons fall just before the death of Adam. The blood moons fall just before Israel went into captivity. The blood moons fall the same day Yeshua was being crucified. The blood moons fall just before the flood. And we've done this on a video teaching on the blood moon. Go and look, check it out. It would seem they are celestial events that are entirely related to our behavior. So how can we know they are indeed related to our behavior and are sent by Jehovah to convey a specific message to us? The fact they are a specific message from Jehovah can be proven in the Torah in the book of Genesis. Okay, I'm reading from Hillel ben David, Craig Killam, who has a good teaching on this. And Jehovah said, let there be lights in the firmament and of the heavens to divide the day of the night, the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, or moedim, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. Genesis 1:14-15. We know these eclipses are related to our behavior from the oral Torah, the Mekilta, and the Peshat Bo, as well as from the Talmud. So this is what Craig Killam is saying. I'm just quoting what he has said. In Sukkah 29a, it says, our rabbis taught that when the sun is in eclipse, it is a bad omen for the entire world. This may be illustrated by the parable. To what can this be compared? To a human being who made a banquet for his servants and put up for them a lamp. When he became wroth with them, he said to his servant, take away the lamp from them and let them sit in the dark. It was taught, R. Meyer said, whenever the luminaries are in eclipse, it is a bad omen for Israel since they are injured to blows. Okay, again, I'm quoting from Sukkah 29a. This may be compared to a school teacher who comes to school with a strap in his hand. Who becomes apprehensive? He who is accustomed to being punished daily. Our rabbis taught, when the sun is in eclipse, it is a bad omen for idolaters. When the moon is in eclipse, it is a bad omen for Israel, since Israel reckons by the moon and idolaters by the sun. If the eclipse is in the east, it is a bad omen for those who dwell in the east. If it is in the west, it is a bad omen for those who dwell in the west. If it is in the midst of heaven, it is a bad omen for the whole world. If its face is red as blood, it is a sign that the sword is coming to this world. It is like, if it is like sackcloth, which is what the one on the right represents, this moon right here. Whoops. What's going on here? So if it is in sackcloth, that's what this one represents. The arrows of famine are coming on the world. If it resembles both, the sword and the arrows of famine are coming to the world. Passover morning here, when we kept Passover, the day before, I saw a blood moon at sunset. I wasn't expecting that. If the eclipse is at sunset, calamity will tarry in its coming. If it is at dawn, it hastens on its way. But some say the order is reversed, and there is no nation which is smitten that its gods are not smitten together with it. As it is said, and against all the gods of Egypt, Jehovah will execute judgment. But when Israel fulfills the will of the omnipresent one, they need have no fear of all these omens, as it is written. So when we are obedient, these things don't mean anything. But we are not obedient. So these things have meaning and something to be aware of. Now, Psalm 89, 30, 32, if the sons forsake my law and do not walk in my judgment, if they break my statutes and do not keep my commandments, then I will punish their transgression with the rod and their iniquity with stripes. That rod is Germany. Isaiah the prophet, who spoke to Jehovah, who spoke of Jehovah's righteous judgment, says in Isaiah 10, verse 1 to 6, woe to those who decree unrighteous decrees, who write misfortune, which they have prescribed, to rob the needy of justice and to take what is right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey and that they may rob the fatherless. What will you do in the day of punishment and the desolation which shall come from afar? To whom will you flee for help, and where will you leave your glory? Without me they shall bow down among the prisoners, and they shall fall among the slain. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. Woe to Assyria, the rod of my anger, and the staff in whose hands is my indignation. I will send him against an ungodly nation, that is us, and against the people of my wrath, again, that is us. And I will give him charge, Assyria, I will give Assyria charge to seize the spoil, to take the prey, and to tread them down like the mire of the streets. Assyria, Germany, the EU, is the rod with whom Jehovah is about to chastise Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, the nations that we live in today. In Ezekiel 20, verse 33 to 38, as I live, says Jehovah, surely with a mighty hand with an outstretched arm, and with fury poured out, I will rule over you. I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you are scattered with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with fury poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and there I will plead my case with you face to face. Just as I pleaded my case with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so I will plead my case with you, says the Lord God. I will make you pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. I will purge the rebels from among you and those who transgress against me. I will bring them out of the country where they dwell, but they shall not enter into the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Jehovah. Jehovah is about to take us out of the places where we dwell and pass under the rod. What does that mean when you pass under the rod? When you pass under the rod of the Assyrians. So Leviticus 27, verse 32, and concerning the tithe of the herd or of the flock, of whatever passes under the rod, the 10th one shall be holy to Jehovah. So these Israelite nations are about to pass under the rod, and only a 10th part will be kept holy to Jehovah. The rest are going to be destroyed. This is serious, serious stuff that we're talking about that's happening to us right now. Leviticus 26:21, and if you walk contrary to me and will not listen to me, but will bring I will bring 7 times more plagues on you according to your sins. I will also send beasts among you that shall bereave you and shall destroy your cattle and make you few in number, and the highway shall be deserted. Your highway shall be deserted. Does that not sound familiar to what's going on right now? And I wanted just to finish that thought here. And if by these things you are not reformed by me, but walk contrary to me, if you're not reformed by your streets being deserted here, then I will also walk contrary to you, and I will punish you 7 times for your sins. Verse 25, and I will bring a sword against you that will execute the vengeance of the covenant that you did not keep at Mount Sinai. When you are gathered within your cities, I will send pestilence among you, just as we are right now, and you shall be delivered into the hand of the enemy. And then we talk about famine. We've already done that. So, again, Randy, mute the mics, please, again. So we have here what I'm showing you back in 2005 and 2008 is the pestilence cycle, the 3rd and 4th and the first year of the 5th cycle. This is 1961 to 1975. It's called the cholera or El Tor is what it was called. And then I looked at the cycle before it, and from 1912 to 1926, we had cholera. And from 1899 to 1923, we had cholera. And I'm only looking in the Anglo-Saxon nations. I'm not looking all around the world, just in the Anglo-Saxon nations. And I got all this information from Wikipedia, so I didn't make it up. Then we have the Spanish flu, or the avian flu, from 1918 to 1920. Again, it comes in the 3rd and 4th sabbatical cycles. If we go before that, we had cholera, a pandemic of cholera in 1863 to 1877. Again, look at the 3rd and 4th in the first year of the 5th sabbatical cycle. If we go before that Jubilee cycle, the Jubilee cycle before that, 1814 to 1828, and again from 1816 to 1826, and 1829 to 1851, cholera. But I've only highlighted the areas that, the 3rd and 4th and the 5th cycle here. 1765 to 1779, in 1775 to 1776. Influenza. These are pandemics. From 1716 to 1730 and 1732 to 1733. Influenza. Another pandemic. In 1760, did I already do that one? I got it here twice, I'm sorry. So then I started looking back and further in time. And I noticed that when King David did the head tax, or counted did the census in Israel, he did that in 973 BC. It's at the end of the second book of Samuel, just before he dies. And what were the three plagues that Jehovah gave him a choice to have? Famine, pestilence, or war. And notice that in King David's time is also the fourth sabbatical cycle. Famine, pestilence, and war. Choose which one you're going to suffer. So David chose pestilence, and 70,000 people died. See a pattern? I'll just leave this here. You can read it or you can stop it in the video. I'm going to skip through this for time's sake. 2 Samuel 24:10, talking about this whole incident. So at the end of it, David builds the altar. He buys the Temple Mount in the city of David. Make sure you understand it's in the city of David. And he builds the altar and begins the process of building the temple. That too is significant because this plague is huge. And if I'm understanding this right, at the end of this plague, we'll just leave that alone. Will we see a temple? Will we see the proper temple? So does the coronavirus fit this pattern? And now this is the part that I got into with Pauline, and she started to cry. This is the part I talked to Jan about last night, and her eyes lit up when she saw it. Again, I'm just trying to go back over all the stuff that I've just shown you. I'm trying to see, am I correct? What's going on? I actually thought that we would be able to go to the Philippines at Shavuot. But we are all now, right now, all locked down. No, you're not allowed to fly into any country. And people of certain nations are having a hard time getting home. So I'm trying to find what's going on here. I'm trying to look at stuff and see, what do I see? What happens? What's going on? And I'm reevaluating everything I've been teaching for the last 15 years and just trying to see, am I still correct? Am I wrong? We've had the countdown clock on Shavuot 2020 now for just over a year. And James didn't want me to do that. He said, it's going to be the death of your ministry. And I said, great. Then let it die if that's the way it's supposed to go. But those countdown clocks are proving true. And James has just finished our new website. We're about to move over there this week, hopefully. And I'm pretty positive that everything I've been saying is coming to pass. Just the details that I don't know. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic on Wednesday as the new coronavirus, which was unknown to the world health officials just 3 months ago, has rapidly spread to more than 121,000, and that it's even changed now. It's even higher now. People from Asia to the Middle East. So this is old news. That, I think, what are we up to now? Almost 500,000 worldwide. The United States is the #1 country for the pandemic in the world today, and they still aren't taking this thing serious. March 11, 2020 was Passover Day. This is a huge alarm bell, a huge gong. Jehovah just made a gong, and are we even watching? This got my attention, but I didn't know what I was looking at. I couldn't figure it out. It took me about a week to realize it. 2020, Passover. Again, I'm looking at the time of Joseph's Jubilee cycle and comparing it to our Jubilee cycle. What am I not seeing? What I did see stunned me, and that's what we're about to get into. I fully expected, and I'm going to stick to my notes now because I put them all in my notes. I want to make sure I don't miss anything and I don't mess up. I fully expected a major event to take place at Shavuot in 2020. Shavuot is the middle of the year, the middle of this Jubilee cycle. 2020 is the middle of the 70th Jubilee cycle. I have somebody else drawing on there. All other charts we looked at have 2020 as a starting place for the 2300 days, for the 7 years of plenty. Shavuot 2020 is the start of the 2300 days. 2300 days later brings you to the Feast of Trumpets in 2026. 2026 is the start of the 3.5 years for the two witnesses until 2030. 2030 is the start of the 3.5 years of the tribulation until 2033 when Satan is locked away. This sequence of events keeps coming back to me as being correct. If you put the 2300 days over top and make it the last 7 years and try and fit all this in the 7-year period, as most Christians do, it does not work. You then have the 3.5 years of the two witnesses and the tribulation at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. So that's why I maintain this order, this chronological order: 2300 days, 3.5 years for the two witnesses, 3.5 years for the tribulation. It lines up with the curses. It lines up with the Jubilee cycle. 2033 matched the Day of Atonement when I counted backwards with the fall holy days. 2033 lined up with Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction. 2033 lined up with Noah's flood. Again, I'm going through the process that my mind is thinking, have I got this correct? I'm going through this process over and over every day, trying to think, what have I missed? What have I missed? What am I not seeing? The 49th year, here's something I told you we're going to come back to before. The 49th year of the UNEP, or Paris Accord, ends in 2020. This is what the Trump administration got out of, and they cannot get out of it until this year in 2020, November 2020. It began June 16th, the week after Shavuot in 1972. And the United States will be out of it this year. It ends this year. The United Kingdom, the 49th year of the United Kingdom in the common market, ends December 31st, 2020. They joined the common market January 31st, 1973, which is still the year before, according to the year starting at Aviv. But they signed the documents in June or July that preceding year, 1972. The UK, Brexit, is coming out of the common market this year in 2020, 49 years later, or one Jubilee cycle later, which is 1 week, which is what Daniel spoke of. They will be in a covenant for 1 week. 2020 was to be the start of the 7 years of plenty for Europe, and then followed by 7 years of famine for Europe and the world, because Europe is the end-time Babylonian power, and they represent Egypt in these last days. What do my notes say? So I'm still questioning, what am I not seeing here? What am I missing? And I kept asking Jehovah to show me what I was not seeing. In December, I had gotten mad at Jehovah. And I'm apologizing. I got mad at him, and because nothing was happening. The countdown to Shavuot is getting closer and closer, and nothing's happening because no one's believing us. I can't get on a radio program. I can't get on a major TV show to explain this stuff. Nothing's happening. And I told Jehovah he had to do something. Jehovah had to do something to get people to believe. The wildfires of Australia, very few people repented and very few people believed there. So that was my prayer in December, January. Yeah, I got mad at him a number of times because nothing was happening. Boom, coronavirus, on pandemic, on Passover, March 11, 2020. Boom. The barley was Aviv for us in February 2020. Again, I'm going through all this is my mental process here. What's going on? The barley was Aviv for us in February 2020. And yet now the reports from Israel, who are now declaring the barley Aviv, even though it too is still in the dough stage, as it was when we declared it Aviv. These groups used to have the barley already brown and shattering before they would declare the month of Aviv. Now they've changed it. They've changed the process. Now they are going with, it's in the dough stage, and by 14 days later, 18 days later, it will be Aviv by then. That's what we've been saying since 2016, and they've been fighting us. If you cut the barley, it ripens overnight. From the dough stage to overnight, ready for flour, is what happens when you cut the barley. So, are they right in declaring this month of Aviv, or were we right in declaring last month the month of Aviv? Again, I'm weighing this stuff. What is Jehovah showing us? Is Passover in March this year, or is it in April? What am I missing? I'm examining everything, trying to find an answer as to what is going on. So I began to think about the second Passover. Moses said that those traveling or those who touch a dead person could keep the second Passover. Numbers 9:9. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, if any man of you or of your generation shall be unclean because of a dead body or in a journey afar off, he shall still keep the Passover to Jehovah. They shall keep it in the 14th day of the second month at evening, eating it with unleavened cakes and bitter herbs." Now, Pat Cluse, if you're still here, I seen you come on. You've been writing me, and I agree with you about what you're saying, that we only keep the Passover part, maybe not the 7 days of unleavened bread. But what if we're not correct in that understanding? What if we're to keep the 7 days of unleavened bread too in the second month? I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility, okay? I know you've been writing me, that's why I'm saying this to you now. So let's just keep everything open and look at everything and just see what Jehovah is showing us. Then I began to think about the 7 days of unleavened bread. And I began to equate each day of unleavened bread as a year. 7 days of unleavened bread equals 7 years. A day for a year prophetically. And this became interesting. Israel kept Passover, and the death angel passed over, the plague passed over, and the firstborn of Egypt died at midnight. This is the first day or the first year of the Exodus, Exodus 12:9. And it happened at midnight. Again, I'm stressing midnight here. Jehovah struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne to the firstborn of the captive that was in the prison, also all the firstborn of the cattle. Exodus 12:41. And it happened at the end of the 430 years, even it was on this very day, all the armies of Jehovah went out of the land of Egypt. Verse 42. It is a night to be much kept to Jehovah for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of Jehovah to be kept by all the sons of Israel. Now, Jan and I were arguing this last night. She is of the impression, and many of you may be too, that they left during the daytime. I am of the impression, and I forgot to go and find other scriptures, but I'm of the impression that Israel left in the night after the death angel passed over. Whether that's 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, I don't know, but they were still dark when they left. And I did not go and find that scripture. That I believe it's in Numbers, but I'm not sure. Numbers 33, 3. And they pulled up stakes from Ramses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. On the next day after the Passover, the sons of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. For the Egyptians buried all their firstborn whom Jehovah had stricken among them. Jehovah also executed judgments upon their gods, and the sons of Israel pulled up stakes from Ramses and pitched in Sukkot. So, pitched in Sukkot. What does Sukkot mean? I'll come back to that. On the 15th day, the plague passed over Israel. On the 15th day, while it was yet dark, Israel left Egypt and fled to Sukkot. Sukkot is temporary dwellings. They're temporary dwellings. It's just a town named Sukkot. It was when they fled. It's on the other side of the Suez Canal, someplace, I'm not sure where, but that's where they gathered. Temporary dwellings. If we divide, so here's what I was thinking. If we divide the day into two parts, with the first part represented by the night with Passover and summer, and the second part being the day part or the winter feast of Sukkot, then we have this similarity. The night equals summer from Aviv 2020 to Trumpets 2020, and the day equals the winter from Trumpets 2020 to Aviv 2021. So that's my analogy here. That's where I'm thinking of. That's what I'm trying to understand, is what's going on right now. Israel is to leave in the night or in the summer season of 2020. They gathered at Sukkot by the end of the first day, by the end of 2020. Okay, that's what I'm seeing from this analogy here on the first day of unleavened bread. The first day of unleavened bread represents the year 2020. They leave in the night, in the summer, and they gather at Sukkot, temporary dwellings, by the end of that first year. Again, I don't have all the answers here, but I'm just sharing with you what I'm seeing. Now, during this time when this pestilence has been plaguing the world, right now, this coronavirus, many...
There's going to be barley in the north.
Thank you. Mute that, please. Psalm 91 is what everyone's reading at this time. And when I read it, these scriptures jumped out at me. Psalm 91:1, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall rest under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Jehovah, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him I will trust. Surely he will deliver you from the fowler's trap. Now, fowlers we've mentioned before, and from the destroying plague. The fowler's trap are the hunters we spoke of earlier, and the plague is right now all around you. Verse 4, he shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall trust. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. You shall not fear the terror by night. Is this talking about the current plague that is here in the night part of the year 2020, the first 6 months of the year? The rest of verse 5, nor because of the arrow that flies by day. Are the arrows that fly by day the missiles that come in the second half of the year, the winter part? Again, I'm thinking out loud. I'm sharing with you my thinking process here and trying to understand what is going on. Psalm 91, verse 6. Nor the plague that walks in darkness, again, the pestilence, the coronavirus right now in the summer part of this year 2020, nor of the plague that walks in the darkness, nor of the destruction laying waste at noonday. Again, the plague that is with us during the first half of the year 2020 and the war that comes in the second half of the year 2020. Destruction at noonday. We'll just finish off here the rest of the psalm. 1,000 shall fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand. It shall not come near you. And you're seeing that right now, all around the world. We are up to just about 10,000 deaths. And I think that was Italy alone. Only with your eyes you shall look and see the reward of the wicked, because you, O Jehovah, are my refuge. If you have made the Most High your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwellings. For he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. They shall bear you up in their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You shall tread on the lion and adder. The young lion and the jackal you shall trample underfoot. Because he has set his love on me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. So the question you have to ask, do you love Jehovah? We showed you at the beginning, you show your love to Jehovah by keeping his commandments. Do you call on his name? Because you honor him by doing these things, praying in the name, and I say the name is Jehovah. By praying in his name, he is going to deliver us. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. This is a very meaningful prayer in light of what I'm looking at. So 2020 is equivalent to this year of 2030. These are the 7 years of plenty. So do these 7 years of unleavened bread fit this mold, fit this thing? The 7 years of plenty in Joseph's time were 7 years of bounty for Egypt. So 7 years of bounty for Europe today? Okay, so the fleeing part, maybe, yes. But the rest of it, because, Egypt is destroyed at the end of those 7 days at the Red Sea. So the 7 years of plenty in Joseph's time does not match my theory. Okay, back to the drawing board. Pray that your flight is not in winter, nor on the Sabbath day. Matthew 24:20. Winter is then the second half of the year, starting with the Feast of Trumpets. If we're, using this analogy that I'm working with. The word translated Sabbath is the word Sabbaton. And Sabbaton is a high holy day. John 19:31. Then the Jews, because it was a preparation, begged Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away so that their bodies should not remain on the cross on the Sabbath. For that Sabbath was a high holy day. That was the Thursday. That was the first day of unleavened bread. That Sabbath is a Sabbaton, a high holy day. Pray that your flight not be in winter or on the high holy day, the Sabbaton. So then I started to look again at the second Exodus. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, in the 17th day of the month, in this day, all the fountains of the great deep were broken up and the windows of the heavens were opened up. Noah had to bury his grandfather who died this very same year. This made Noah unclean, and he is now keeping the second Passover. That is my understanding of what is going on here. I cannot prove that, but I strongly suspect it. Noah is keeping the second Passover. That's why the flood began in the second month, on the 17th day. So when I go to the time of the flood, and I'm using Torah calendar for this, Torah calendar has at that year, now they're going by Julian years, so the year is 2881. Because they're using Julian dating system, it's the year before, it's 2882. On the 14th, On the 14th is Passover. On the 17th day of the second month, the floods came. Now I compare that to when Yeshua was killed on the 14th day. He came out of the grave on the 17th day, at the end of the Passover. At the end of the Sabbath. In both cases, mankind was being redeemed and saved. Jehovah saved mankind from the flood by locking Noah in the ark. And he saved mankind from sin, having paid the price for our sins and coming out of the grave. This is the start of the wave sheaf day at the end of the 17th. That's when the saints walked into Jerusalem and were raised up. I'm just pointing out the things I'm seeing. The second month, when Noah entered the ark and the floods came, can be compared, and this is what I'm doing, to the second 7 years of famine in red in Joseph's Jubilee cycle. Again, I'm experimenting here, and I'm trying to see if I see a pattern. You may not agree with me, but I'm trying to see a pattern. The second Passover, the second set of 7 years in Joseph's time. Wednesday is the 14th. Thursday, Passover day, the 15th, when Israel fled. Friday, Nisan the 16th, 2239. Shabbat, Nisan the 17th, which is a sabbatical year, 2240. And I'm just seeing if these things match, if I'm if I'm making the right connections. Again, I'm experimenting. So I did it again, and instead of the second Passover, we're now at the first Passover when Yeshua died. And Passover is the 2230. Thursday, the High Holy Day, 2231. Friday, Nisan, 2232. And the sabbatical year, the 17th day of the month, is 2233. Am I seeing a pattern? Am I correct in understanding and saying that the first Passover is the first 7 days of unleavened bread, and the analogy is drawn from that, and the second Passover would be the 7 days of unleavened bread again? Again, I'm speculating here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not saying this is true. I'm not saying this is doctrine. I'm not saying this is fact. I'm trying to understand the Sabbatical and Jubilee cycles. I'm trying to understand them in light of the coronavirus happening right now. The first 7 days of unleavened bread is likened to the 7 years of plenty in green. The second Passover, or 7 days of unleavened bread, is likened to the 7 years of famine in red. And yes, Pat, I hear your voice. I'm hearing it, but I'm just, go with me, just experiment here. We flee at the start of the green 7 years of plenty, which is equal to the year 2020, the start of the 2300 days of Daniel 8. We are also brought back by the two witnesses by 2029. So right here, 2029, we're brought back by the two witnesses during the middle of the 7 years of famine in red. So that's, again, up here. That would be this time here in red. When we were brought back to Israel before Passover in 2030. And at Passover 2030, we again flee into the wilderness of Moab, the same as when Noah was delivered from the world while it was destroyed. We have shown you how the temple was built and destroyed in the 4th millennium. And we've shown you how Israel was destroyed in 723 BC and Judah in 586 BC, and again in 70 Common Era, all of them on the 4th millennial day. Yeshua was also killed in this 4th millennium in 31 Common Era. In our current Jubilee cycle, the 120th one since the creation of Adam and the 70th one since Israel became a nation, Wednesday, the 14th, equals 2020. Thursday, Passover Day, the 15th of 2021. Friday, the 16th, 2022, and Shabbat is the sabbatical year of 2023. Again, I'm trying to make connections. Moses' signal to leave was when the firstborn were killed at midnight. Then Pharaoh told him to leave. That is 6 hours after sunset, after the sun is set, and 6 hours before the sun rises, when we compare these 12 hours of midnight to the first 6 months of the year. Aviv the trumpets. The middle of this time period is then the third month. So we are talking about May once again. It is May 3rd. Is it May 3rd or May 31st when the second Passover, with the second Passover time? I am positive something is about to happen at Shavuot this year to trigger all these sequences of events to the end of this age. Throughout history, Jehovah has performed great events on his high holy days. Passover and the death of Yeshua on the 14th of Nisan, Way Sheaf Day and the saints being raised from the dead on the 18th, Way Sheaf Day and Noah being locked inside the ark at the end of the 17th. Shavuot, on Shavuot, the Torah is given and the Holy Spirit. And the same day we will be changed in the twinkling of an eye to him, to meet him in the clouds. On the Feast of Trumpets, when Yeshua was born, is the same day he will come back on. Sukkot, the wedding banquet, and the 8th day, when Jehovah dwells with man on this earth, and when Solomon dedicated the temple. Each of these major events takes place on a high holy day. How many of us could have imagined that at the beginning of this biblical year, we would find ourselves locked down in our homes with many of our freedoms gone away from us overnight? No one seems to know what tomorrow will bring. We wake up in the morning and find ourselves still in the twilight zone, still thinking this is a dream. But this is not a dream. When Passover came this past March, and who declared a worldwide pandemic, we remembered that Israel was shut up in their homes when the pestilence came at that time also. We remember what happened in the night, on that last night before the Exodus. Thousands died that night. This Passover, just like our forefathers back in Egypt, each family stayed in their own home and ate the Passover meal with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. We did this on Zoom here together. The doors were shut and they were covered, and the blood of the Lamb to keep away the plague. Today we are covered with the blood of our Messiah if we repent and if we return to obeying him. This is our blood on our door today. Therefore, come, my people, enter your chambers, shut the doors behind you, hide yourself, as it were, for a little moment until the indignation is past. Isaiah 26:20. Jehovah is very much in control, having sovereignty over our lives and destiny. This is one of the most exciting times to be alive and to be able to watch from front row seats as Jehovah redeems Israel and us today. Maybe it's time to think about a statement that was told to Israel right at the same time of year as ours before they crossed the Jordan into the land. I'm almost done. However, there shall be between you and the ark a distance of about 2,000 cubits of measure. Do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you shall go. The ark is telling you how to go. The commandments are inside the ark. For you have not passed this way before. Never in the world history have we done such a thing as this, a worldwide pandemic when we're about to leave. Then Joshua said to the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow Jehovah will do wonders among you. Joshua 1:5. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not fail you nor forsake you. Be strong and of good courage, for you shall divide for an inheritance to this people the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, so that you may be careful to do according to the law which my servant Moses commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may act wisely wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from you out of your mouth, but you shall meditate on it by day and by night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous, and then you shall act wisely. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, neither be dismayed, for Jehovah your God is with you in all the places that you go. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. And I'm going to stop the teaching here, but first let me close with prayer. Our Father Jehovah, our powerful and great Creator, our King and our Savior and our Redeemer, I thank you, Father, for the Sabbath. I thank you for your holy days and the things that you teach them on us and the things that you do on those holy days. I thank you, Father, for showing me about the prophecies of Abraham and for me being able to share that with the brethren as I have. And I don't know if what I'm seeing here with the coronavirus is true or not, or lining up the sabbatical, the 7 days of unleavened bread with the next 7 years or not, if that's correct. I'm not sure. But I'm sharing what I'm seeing with the brethren, Father, and I pray that you'll continue to guide us and lead us and help us to understand your truths better and deeper. Help us, Father, to pray for each other. We're coming into terrifying times, and pray, Father, that you be with us and lead us to be courageous and to be brave, to face them head on and not to back down, not to cave in and take on the mark of the beast. We are coming into very dangerous times. Please continue to reveal your truths to us, Father. Continue to guide us and help us. And I pray that you be with each and every one here and those listening abroad, for the glory of your great name. In the name of Jehovah, I pray, give you thanks. Amen. So I'm going to stop share. Coming back here. Recording pause.